Hi, my name is Olivia Lockhart, and I'm 30 years old. Today, I'm going to tell you how my family chose a backyard barbecue over the most important day of my life, and how that decision convinced me to erase myself from their world completely. But before I continue, please like, share, and subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this. You might think you'd never walk away from your own family. By the end of this, you might not be so sure. Let me start with the basics. I'm the middle child of three, wedged perfectly between perfection and privilege. My older sister Vivian is 34, effortlessly beautiful, always camera ready, always perfectly lit in every room she walks into. She's married to a corporate attorney named Carter. They have two kids who could model for catalog covers, a kitchen with marble counters, and a life that photographs well. Vivian runs a boutique consulting firm from home, which, from what I can tell, mostly means she buys expensive blazers and goes to wine and cheese networking events twice a month. My younger brother, Brendan, is 27. He's Dad's golden boy, the heir to my father's commercial real estate company. He's loud, charming in a frat boy way, and somehow even his mediocre results get praised like he just invented cold fusion. He just got engaged to his girlfriend, Autumn, and their wedding has swallowed up every family conversation like a black hole. And then there's me. I'm Olivia, 30 years old, invisible since childhood. On paper, I'm the achiever. Environmental engineering. National Merit Scholar. Full ride to Rice. Master's degree. Now finishing a PhD in environmental engineering at Stanford. Specializing in sustainable water systems that could literally change how millions of people access clean water. In my family, that translates to Olivia's still in school. Growing up in Austin, Texas, we were comfortable, upper middle class, with aspirations of more. Dad built his real estate empire from scratch. Mom worked part-time as an interior designer for luxury homes. Our house looked like a magazine spread. From the outside, everything was perfect, unless you were me, watching from the margins. I learned very early, work twice as hard, expect half the recognition. So when I say my dissertation defense was the biggest day of my life, I'm not exaggerating. 8 years of brutal research, sleepless nights, a topic that could transform water access in coastal communities. Defending that work wasn't just academic, it was proof I mattered. It had to be different this time, it just had to. Back in October, the university mailed official defense announcements on letterhead to my parents' house. I screenshotted the digital copy and sent it in our family group chat too. April 22nd, 3:00 p.m., Patterson Hall, Stanford University. Can't wait to celebrate this milestone with you all. I still remember how earnestly I typed that last line, how hopeful I let myself be. 4 hours later, Mom responded, "So proud, honey." Vivian, "Amazing, sis." Brendan, "Nice work, Liv." Dad, of course, didn't respond. He doesn't really do texting. He prefers to let other people manage his calendar, including his daughter's whole life. I should have understood exactly what that meant. Through November and December, I mentioned the defense at every family gathering. We did Sunday dinners at my parents' house twice a month. I was usually the only one who showed up consistently. Vivian always had kid activities. Brendan perpetually had work emergencies that somehow always landed on family days. Defense is in 5 months, I said in January, passing roasted vegetables around the table. April 22nd. You're all marked down, right? Absolutely, Mom said, scrolling through her phone. Wouldn't miss it for the world. It starts at 3, I added, but if you can come at 2:30, we can get photos before. Of course, honey, Mom murmured, still not looking up. Dad barely glanced over his tablet. What's that, kiddo? My dissertation defense, I repeated. PhD, April 22nd. Right, he said. Got it on the calendar. Red flags everywhere. Whole fields of them, flapping in fluorescent red. But I wanted to believe this time would be different. I needed it to be. In February, Brendan posted something in the family chat that made my blood run cold. Brendan, April 22nd, 1:00 p.m., 6:00 p.m., bringing back the legendary Brennan Spring Barbecue, bash, brisket, live band, cornhole tournament. Let's go. I stared at my phone until the words blurred. I typed back with shaking fingers, Brendan, that's my defense day. He replied 20 minutes later. Oh yeah. What time is your thing again? My thing. 3 for like 2 hours plus photos, I wrote. People can't do both. Stanford is an hour away without traffic. His answer? People can do both. Come to the barbecue after. We'll celebrate you too. I called Mom immediately. Did you see Brendan scheduled his barbecue for the same day as my defense? I said. I did, she said, sounding delighted. Isn't it wonderful? He's really becoming quite the host. Mom, you can't attend both, I said. You physically can't be at Stanford and at his house at the same time. Long pause. Olivia, don't be melodramatic, she said finally. We'll work something out. Work something out? My voice cracked. I've had this date set for months. Brendan just planned this. He's put so much work into this barbecue, she said. All his friends from the firm are coming. Carter's partners. Important people. We'll figure it out, okay? But I already knew. Still, through March, I kept confirming. Monday before the defense. Mom, just confirming you're coming Saturday? 3 p.m., Patterson Hall. Yes, sweetheart, she said, written down. Wednesday, I texted Dad. See you Saturday at Stanford. Looking forward to it, kiddo, he wrote back. Thursday, I called Brendan. You're still coming to my defense, right? Yeah, he said. Though Autumn really wants to stay at the barbecue the whole time. She's stressed about the planning. Brendan, I said slowly, it's my dissertation defense. I know, he said. We'll figure it out. Friday night, I made one last call to Mom. She answered on the 5th ring, breathless. Hi, honey. Can't talk long. I'm at Brendan's helping set up for tomorrow. My world tilted. Set up for what? I asked, even though I already knew. For his barbecue, she said. The rental company delivered the wrong tent size. It's a total disaster. Mom, I said, my defense is tomorrow. I know, sweetie. 3 o'clock, right? Right, I whispered. And you're coming? Of course, she said. See you there. Gotta go. The caterer's calling. She hung up. I stood in my tiny off-campus kitchen, phone still pressed to my ear, staring at nothing. Every rational part of me knew what was about to happen. Every hopeful part of me still prayed I was wrong. On Saturday morning, I woke up at 6, even though my defense wasn't until 3. Sleep was impossible. I put on my navy suit, the one I'd had tailored specifically for this day. I did my makeup carefully, curled my hair, checked my slides 3 more times. Today, I told myself, you become Dr. Olivia Lockhart. Today, they finally see you. Natasha, my best friend from the program, picked me up at noon. Her parents had flown in from Philadelphia. They brought flowers and a banner that said, Congratulations, Dr. Lockhart, in glittery letters. Your family's meeting you there? Natasha's mom asked from the front seat. That's the plan, I said, my voice tighter than I wanted it to be. By 2 p.m., I was in Patterson Hall, arranging my notes, checking the projector. My hands shook just enough that I had to press them flat on the lectern to steady them. My phone buzzed. Text from Vivian. Brendan's barbecue is insane. Brisket is perfection. Wish you could be here before your thing. My thing. My stomach turned to ice. I texted back, my defense is in 1 hour, Vivian. No response. 2:15. I called Mom. She answered over a roar of music and laughter. Olivia, where are you? We're all at Brendan's. I closed my eyes. I already knew, but I asked anyway. I'm at Stanford, Mom, I said slowly. Patterson Hall, where I've told you I'd be for 8 months. There was a beat of silence, then, What? No, honey. We thought your defense was next weekend. Something cracked inside me so cleanly it almost sounded like glass. I sent you the official announcement in October, I said. I've mentioned it at every single dinner. I called you 3 days ago to confirm. Well, we're at Brendan's barbecue right now, she said, irritation creeping into her tone. Everyone's here. All his colleagues, Carter's partners, the neighbors. We can't just leave. I'm defending my doctoral dissertation, I said. And you chose brisket. Don't take that tone, young lady, she snapped. We got confused about the dates. These things happen. We'll celebrate with you next week. These things don't just happen, Mom, I whispered. Not after 8 months of reminders. You're being unreasonable, she said. Don't ruin Brendan's event by creating drama. We'll see you afterward. She hung up. I stared at my reflection in the glass door of the lecture hall. Perfect suit, perfect hair, perfect makeup. I looked like a woman whose family was about to walk in and fill the front row with proud smiles. Instead, 5 seats with reserved family signs sat empty. Natasha found me standing frozen in the hallway. They're not coming, are they? She asked quietly. They're at Brendan's barbecue, I said. They said they got confused about the date. Natasha's jaw clenched. We all knew the date. I've had it in my calendar since October. I know, I said. She squeezed my shoulder. Then let us be your family today. At 2:45, we processed into the auditorium. My committee, Dr. Patterson, Dr. Reeves, Dr. Okafor, sat at the front, papers in hand. The room was sparsely filled. Natasha's parents and sisters in the first row, a few fellow doctoral candidates, some research partners. The 5 empty seats I'd reserved for my parents, Vivian, Brendan, and Autumn, stared back at me like black holes. At 3 p.m. exactly, Dr. Patterson called the room to order. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here for the dissertation defense of Olivia Marie Lockhart, whose groundbreaking research on sustainable desalination systems for coastal communities represents a significant advancement in environmental engineering. I stood up, smoothed my suit, and walked to the front. With every step, the absence in the front row pressed harder against my ribs. I took a breath, looked at Natasha's family, at her mom, already clutching tissues, her dad raising his phone to record, her sisters grinning like this was their victory too. My own family was an hour away, laughing around a grill. "Good afternoon," I began, voice steadier than I felt. "My name is Olivia Lockhart, and today I'll be presenting 8 years of research that my family didn't consider important enough to show up for." I swallowed, adjusted the line. 8 years of research on sustainable water systems, I corrected, and clicked to the first slide. I defended my work flawlessly. And the whole time, those 5 empty seats stared back at me, silently confirming what I had always suspected. I just didn't know yet that by the end of this story, I wouldn't just walk away from my family. I'd erase their name from my life completely. When you spend 8 years building toward a single moment, you imagine that when it finally arrives, it will feel different. Bigger, louder, brighter. Instead, my defense felt like standing on a stage in front of a roaring ocean, with noise-canceling headphones on. I moved through my slides with practiced precision: thermodynamic efficiency, membrane fouling mitigation, pilot trials in coastal communities. I knew my numbers, my graphs, my error bars. I answered every question from my committee with the calm, controlled voice I'd rehearsed. But beneath the surface, a different monologue ran on repeat. "They're not coming. They chose a party. You reminded them 23 times. You were still forgettable." When Dr. Patterson asked one final, pointed question about the scalability of my design, my mind flickered, just for a second, to the image of Brendan flipping brisket over a grill. I dragged myself back. "By optimizing energy recovery and using modular units," I replied, laser-focused, "we can scale deployment without sacrificing efficiency. The pilot data from the 2 coastal communities confirms." I clicked to the data slide. Numbers. Proof. A lifetime of always having to prove I deserved to be in the room. 2 hours later, I stepped out into the hallway while the committee deliberated. Natasha pressed a bottle of water into my hand. "You were incredible," she said. "Seriously, I wanted to stand up and clap after slide 3. Her dad joined us, grinning. "You just carried an entire room, Olivia. Whatever happens in there, you should know that." I nodded, but my eyes drifted to the 5 empty seats again, visible through the cracked auditorium door. "Maybe they got in the car," I heard myself say, hating the hope in my voice. "Traffic in the bay can be insane. Maybe they're just late." Natasha followed my gaze, then quietly stepped in front of it, blocking my view. "If they cared," she said softly, "they'd be here on time." The committee called me back in. I stood at the front again, hands folded in front of me, heartbeat stuttering. Dr. Patterson cleared his throat, a small smile tugging at his mouth. "Olivia," he said, "your dissertation represents a significant contribution to the field of sustainable desalination. Your methodology is rigorous, your innovations are elegant, and your potential impact is enormous." He glanced at the other committee members. "It is my great pleasure to say, congratulations, Dr. Lockhart. Your dissertation is approved with distinction." For a moment, the words didn't register. Then Natasha's family erupted. Her sisters whooped. Her mom burst into tears, clutching tissues to her face. Her dad stood up, applauding harder than anyone else in the room. My fellow candidates clapped. Some of my research partners whistled. And in the middle of it all, I stood there, smiling mechanically, feeling something vast and hollow spreading behind my ribs. I'd done it. I'd become exactly what I'd promised myself I would be. And the people who were supposed to care the most were eating barbecue an hour away. Afterward, photos blurred together, me between Natasha's parents, her sisters holding up the banner they'd brought from Philadelphia, my committee posing stiffly with forced smiles. I borrowed their joy, trying to let it soak into the parts of me that felt numb. "Your parents must be so proud," Natasha's mom said gently as we stood outside for pictures. "I'm sure they're devastated they couldn't make it." I opened my mouth, closed it. "They're busy," I said. It was the closest thing to a truth I could manage. That evening, Natasha's family insisted on taking me to an upscale steakhouse downtown. "To Dr. Olivia Lockhart," her dad said, lifting his glass during the toast. "To her brilliance, her persistence, and to the lives that will be changed by her work. Everyone clinked glasses, eyes warm, smiles genuine. I took a sip and realized my hands were shaking. You did it, I told myself. You did it without them. You don't need them. But some small, stubborn part of me still whispered, they should have been here. By 8 p.m., my phone buzzed constantly on the table. I finally flipped it over. Group chat. Brendan. Congrats on finishing. Sorry we missed it. Barbecue went late. Super successful, though. People already asking about next year's. Vivian. Hope your defense went well. Let's grab coffee soon and you can tell me all about it. Individual texts. Dad. Sorry we couldn't make it, sweetheart. Got our wires crossed on the date. Dinner next week. And then Mom. Olivia, you're being very unreasonable about this. We made an honest mistake. Stop being dramatic. I stared at the messages until the words bled into one another. Honest mistake. 8 months of reminders. An official announcement. Group texts. Phone calls. In-person conversations. 23 separate times I'd brought it up. The waitress came by to refill our water. Natasha watched me carefully. What did they say? She asked. I put the phone face down. They said it was a mistake, I replied. Natasha's jaw tightened. Of course they did. Later, under my comforter in my tiny apartment, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. The messages replayed in my mind, each line like a pin sticking into my skin. We can't just leave. Important people are here. Don't be melodramatic. We'll celebrate you later. You're being unreasonable. Honest mistake. Something inside me, the part that had been stretched, bent, and patched for 3 decades, finally tore, cleanly, irreparably. If they could forget this, they would forget anything. If this day wasn't enough to matter, nothing would be. On Sunday, my phone lit up with Mom's calls. Call 1, call 2, call 3. I watched it ring, expressionless. Eventually, she stopped calling and sent a text. This silent treatment is childish. We're your family. Call me back. I stared at the word family for a long time. Then I opened my settings and blocked her number. Then Dad's, Vivian's, Brendan's. One by one, I severed the lines connecting my phone to theirs. The silence that followed was not peaceful. It was raw, throbbing, like a wound exposed to cold air. Monday morning, I woke up with a decision lodged so deeply in my chest it might as well have been bone. If they wanted me invisible, I would give them exactly what they'd treated me as my whole life. I took the Caltrain into the city, transferred to a bus, and walked up the steps of the courthouse. The building smelled like old paper and disinfectant, humming with the low murmur of bureaucratic routine. Name change petitions? I asked the security guard. Window 4, he said, without looking up. At window 4, a tired woman slid forms toward me. Petitioner, she asked. Olivia Brennan, I said automatically. The surname tasted wrong in my mouth. Heavy. Borrowed. New name? She asked. I hesitated for only a second. Olivia Marie Lockhart, I replied. Lockhart was my grandmother's maiden name. My grandmother had been the only person who ever asked real questions about my research. The only one who sent clippings of water crisis articles with little notes in the margins. You'll fix this one day, Liv. I believe in you. She'd been dead 3 years. But in that moment, sitting under the yellow courthouse lights, I felt closer to her than to anyone sharing my DNA. I filled out the forms with steady handwriting, signed them, paid the fee. As I slid the papers back, the clerk barely glanced at my face. It'll take a couple of weeks, she said. You'll get the confirmation in the mail. A couple of weeks, and Olivia Brennan would officially cease to exist. When I walked back out into the sunlight, something felt lighter. Not healed, not okay, but precise, like I'd finally made a decision instead of waiting for them to change. I'd already accepted a position with an environmental consulting firm in Portland, EO Solutions Northwest. I'd told my family I was considering offers, never giving details, because some part of me had known this ending was coming. Now I let it. I changed my email, updated my LinkedIn with Olivia Lockhart. In HR systems and professional databases, I began the slow, tedious work of erasing any trace of the old name. The moving company came in early May. Natasha helped me pack. We labeled boxes, kitchen, books, research, things that got me through. Are you absolutely sure? She asked, leaning against the truck. About all of this? Cutting them off, changing your name, moving states. They cut me off years ago, I said quietly. I'm just making it official. They're going to lose their minds when they realize you're gone, she said. Good, I replied. Let them feel invisible for once. I didn't leave a forwarding address. I left behind my childhood bedroom, my parents' house, the city where I had spent 3 decades trying to be seen. What I didn't leave behind was my old phone. I tucked it, powered off, into a drawer in my new Portland apartment like a sealed time capsule. For 3 weeks, I built a life that had nothing to do with them. New office, new colleagues who cared about coastal communities and climate resilience. Gray skies, soft drizzle, coffee shops where no one knew my last name or my family's expectations. For 3 weeks, my chest slowly stopped aching every time my mind wandered to Texas. Then one night, curiosity got the better of me. I opened the drawer, took out the old phone, plugged it in. When it finally powered on, the notification bar exploded. 83 missed calls, over 200 texts. Mom, Olivia, where are you? This isn't funny. Mom, your father and I are very worried. Call us immediately. Dad, your mother is beside herself. Whatever we did, let's talk about it. Vivian, did you seriously move without telling anyone? That's incredibly immature. Brendan, Liv, what's going on? Mom's freaking out. Mom, I called Stanford. They confirmed you completed your degree but won't give me your address. Mom, this is ridiculous. You're blowing this way out of proportion. Mom, I filed a missing person report. The police need to know you're safe. That last one actually made me laugh out loud. Missing. I was 30 years old. I was a licensed engineer with a doctorate. I had a job, an apartment, and a city that didn't know my family's name. I wasn't missing. For the first time in my life, I was exactly where I chose to be. I scrolled through a few more messages, the same themes on loop. We're worried, you're overreacting, come home, think about your family. How could you do this to us? Not once did any of them say, we're sorry we chose a barbecue over your doctorate. Not once did any of them say, we hurt you, we were wrong. I powered the phone off, put it back in the drawer. That was the day I stopped being the invisible daughter in their story and started being the main character in my own. 6 months passed. 6 months of gray Portland mornings, slow-building rainstorms, and an office full of people who actually asked me about my research because they cared, not because they wanted a convenient brag for their next charity brunch. 6 months of becoming Olivia Lockhart in full. My hair was shorter now, my wardrobe calmer, my shoulders less tense, my laugh came easier. Alex, kind, steady, civil engineer Alex, had started as a coworker who lingered at my desk to ask questions about membrane performance, and had quietly become something more. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like a person instead of a placeholder. But life has a way of testing every new beginning. It came in the form of an obituary link sent by a distant relative on my grandmother's side. Ruth Eleanor Morrison, age 91, passed peacefully. Aunt Ruth, the last living sister of my grandmother. The woman who mailed me cards on my birthdays long after everyone else stopped, who wrote "Proud of you, Liv" in perfect cursive inside every holiday envelope, who told me stories about my grandmother when I felt alone during undergrad, who sent me a congratulatory card after my dissertation, addressed to Dr. Lockhart, the only family member to acknowledge my new name without commentary or guilt. She deserved my presence, even if it meant going back to Austin, even if it meant seeing them. The funeral was at Riverbend Chapel, same place where we buried my grandmother. I flew in quietly, took a rideshare from the airport, and arrived in a simple black dress and a soft, neutral coat. I sat toward the middle, close enough to honor Aunt Ruth, far enough to avoid immediate detection. But grief has a way of pulling familiar faces toward the same orbit. Mom spotted me first. Her face snapped through 4 different expressions in 5 seconds. Shock, relief, confusion, then the sharp, almost theatrical pain she used to wield like a weapon. "Olivia?" she whispered, half choking on my name. I turned. "Mom!" Dad appeared beside her, then Vivian, then Brendan, the whole lineup, entering like a scene they'd rehearsed. Vivian's eyes narrowed. Brendan's jaw flexed in confusion. Dad looked older, but not wiser. Mom touched my arm before I could sidestep. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, not softly, not kindly, like I'd crashed her event. "Aunt Ruth was important to me," I replied. "I came to say goodbye." She blinked hard. "Portland?" she asked. "You're in Portland?" "Yes." "When were you going to tell us?" I wasn't. Dad folded his arms. "You can't just disappear for 6 months without telling anyone." "Actually," I said calmly, "I can. I'm an adult." Vivian stepped forward, cold sarcasm dripping from every syllable. "This is about the defense, isn't it? You're still holding a grudge." A low, humorless laugh escaped me. "A grudge? No, Vivian. Grudges are for petty things. This is clarity." Brendan scoffed. "You're making this bigger than it needs to be." I looked at him. the golden boy whose birthday parties were treated like national holidays. Name one important event of mine you attended, I said. He froze. What, right now? Yes, name one. Silence. Vivian opened her mouth, closed it. Dad looked down at his shoes. Mom bristled. There were things. Name one, I repeated. Mom's lips tightened. Your college graduation. You were at Vivian's anniversary dinner, I said. I remember because you sent me a text that said, take pictures, Fiane, while I walked the stage alone. Dad tried next. Your master's. You were at Brendan's golf tournament, I cut in. You said you'd make it up to me next time. Vivian swallowed. Your research award. You had a brunch with your friends, I said. You posted it on Instagram with the caption, much needed girl time. I got my award alone. More silence. I could feel the air thinning between us. It wasn't like that, Mom whispered finally. It was exactly like that, I replied. Brendan shoved his hands into his pockets. You should have reminded us more if it mattered so much. My breath caught. I stared at him for a long, stunned moment. I reminded you 23 times about my defense, I said. 23. With written announcements, texts, calls, in-person conversations. You still chose brisket. He had no comeback. The funeral director interrupted from the chapel doorway, voice gentle. We're ready to begin. I walked past my family without looking back and sat with Aunt Ruth's side of the room. People who had written me letters of congratulations, who remembered my achievements, who had asked about my dissertation because they were proud, not obligated. The service was beautiful, simple, quiet, honest. Exactly the opposite of my family. Afterward, I slipped out through a side door to avoid the crowd, and them. But Mom followed. She called my name softly at first, then sharply. Olivia, please, stop. I turned. She stood there in her tasteful black dress, grief smudged with frustration, shaking her head like I was the one ruining the day. We need to talk about this, she said. There's nothing to talk about. You changed your name, she said, voice cracking. Do you know how that made us feel? Finding out our daughter legally erased us? I met her eyes. You spent 30 years erasing me, I said quietly. I just made it official. Mom flinched. That's not fair, she whispered. It's perfectly fair, I replied. You should have shown up when it mattered. She stepped closer, desperate now. Olivia, come home. We can fix this. We're family. No, I said. Family shows up. Family remembers important dates. Family doesn't choose a barbecue over a doctorate. Those are things you do, not family. So you're just done? She whispered. Just gone? I opened the door of my rental car. I told you, I said softly. I'll come back for funerals. I got in. Closed the door. She lifted a hand like she might knock on the window. But she didn't. She let it fall. I watched her shrink in the rearview mirror as I drove away. Austin, a city where I'd spent years clawing for recognition, blurred behind me like a place I once dreamed of belonging. But maybe the most important part was that, for the first time in my life, leaving didn't hurt. It felt like exhalings after holding my breath for 3 decades. Back in Portland, life didn't go back to normal. It became something better. My days filled with work that mattered. Projects designing water reclamation systems for drought-prone towns, pilot programs for sustainable desalination units, community workshops where people thanked me with sincerity instead of politeness. My nights were warm and steady. Natasha practically lived in my apartment on Thursdays, bringing Thai food and gossiping about departmental politics. My coworkers invited me to trivia nights, hikes, impromptu karaoke. And Alex became the quiet miracle I never saw coming. He'd show up at my desk with coffee and a question about membrane permeability, but stay to talk about books and childhood dreams and why he left Texas long before I did. He never pushed, never demanded. He simply saw me, fully, effortlessly, something my birth family had never done. But Austin wasn't finished with me. My past had a way of knocking loudly. The first knock came in the form of a letter delivered to my office. A physical envelope, handwritten, forwarded from the main reception desk with a sticky note. Someone asked for you directly. My stomach tightened. I recognized my mother's looping handwriting before I even opened it. 5 pages, 5 long, frantic, self-justifying pages. Olivia, we're so sorry. We were overwhelmed with planning Brendan's event. We must have mixed up the dates. You disappearing was cruel. Your name change broke our hearts. You owe us a conversation. For every sentence of apology, there were 3 lines of excuses. By page 3, it shifted tone. You've punished us long enough. Page 4, your father is devastated. Page 5, please come home. This family is falling apart without you. Not once did she say, We were wrong. We hurt you. We understand why. I slid the entire letter through my office shredder while the fluorescent lights hummed overhead. I didn't save a single piece. The second knock came 2 weeks later. My receptionist buzzed my office. Her voice was hesitant. Olivia, there's a man here asking to see you. He says it's urgent. I stepped into the lobby. Brendan stood there. Bigger shoulders, shorter hair, same entitled expression. Liv, he said, sounding stunned. You look different. I am different, I said coolly. What do you want? He shoved his hands in his pockets, the same boyish gesture he'd used when he got caught breaking things as a kid. You changed your name, he said, like it was a crime. Yes. To Lockhart, he added. Grandma's name. Yes. Mom cried for a week. That sounds like her, I said. Loud reactions, minimal introspection. His eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? It means crying isn't accountability. He flushed. Look, you leaving? That was messed up. We're your family. You don't just cut people off because they missed one event. One event? I repeated quietly. Maybe if you'd reminded us more. I stepped closer. Brendan, I said, voice level but razor sharp, name one important event of mine you attended. One. He opened his mouth, closed it. I watched the realization dawn, not remorse yet, but the faintest crack in the narrative he'd built around himself. You can't name one, I said, but I can name every birthday party, every engagement celebration, every housewarming, every barbecue of yours that I attended. I showed up for you every time. You showed up for me. Never. That's not fair, he muttered. It's exactly fair. He swallowed. Mom's worried sick. Mom is worried about losing control, I replied. That's not the same thing. And Dad? He asked. I paused. My father had always been distant, but he rarely lashed out. His absence was quiet, not cruel. He could have shown up too, I said finally. Brendan shook his head. Liv, you're just going to stay gone? Forever? I told Mom, I said. I'll come back for funerals. He winced. That's cold. It's honest. He stood there, breathing hard through frustration, confusion, a smudge of guilt he didn't yet understand. You're happy here, he said, almost accusingly. Yes, I replied, I am. He stared at me for a long moment. You didn't even give us a chance to fix it. You didn't even give me a chance to matter. He had no comeback. He left angry, but anger was easier for him than accountability. The third knock came as an email from Vivian. A long, flowery, guilt-soaked essay about family bonds, forgiveness, miscommunication, and the burden I was placing on everyone. It ended with, if you don't come home, we will never heal. I wrote one line back. You texted me about brisket during my dissertation defense. We have nothing else to discuss. She never replied. The fourth knock came 8 months after the funeral. A simple email from Dad. Olivia, I'm sorry. You deserve better from me. I hope you found happiness. Dad. No excuses, no manipulation, no demands. Just a truth I'd waited 30 years to hear. I sat with it for a long time. Then I wrote back. Thank you, I have. It was the only olive branch I accepted. Because healing doesn't require reconciliation. Healing requires truth. And the truth was simple. I hadn't lost a family. I had finally stopped chasing one. 3 years passed. 3 years of rain-washed Portland mornings, research breakthroughs, conferences where people actually knew my name, and a life built from choices instead of obligations. I was 33 now, lead environmental engineer at EO Solutions Northwest, published researcher, recognized expert in sustainable water systems, a woman whose work mattered and whose life finally made sense, and I was no longer alone. Alex and I had grown from colleagues to friends to something quieter, deeper. He loved the parts of me most people found intimidating. The intensity, the ambition, the absolute relentless focus. He once told me, while tracing diagrams on my palm with his finger, your brain is my favorite story. We got married last fall. A small ceremony, just friends. Natasha, of course, was my maid of honor. Alex's parents walked me down the aisle together, both beaming with pride so warm it nearly split my ribs open. No forced smiles, no guilt, no empty seats. I kept the guest list small on purpose. There are two kinds of people in the world. People who show up for you, and people who expect you to show up for them, but only on their terms. Only the first kind got an invitation. My birth family found out through social media when Alex's sister posted photos. Me in a simple ivory dress, Alex lifting my veil, Natasha crying mascara tears into her champagne, Alex's parents hugging me like they'd waited their whole lives to have a daughter like me. The reaction was predictable. Mom sent a card. Olivia, I can't believe you excluded us. We're your parents. This is unforgivable. We deserve to be there. I read it once, then tossed it in the bin. Vivian posted a cryptic Instagram story, something passive aggressive about family loyalty and betrayal, but never reached out personally. Brendan sent nothing. Dad sent nothing. Maybe silence was their final form of communication. It didn't matter. My life was no longer orbiting around their expectations. People sometimes ask, why won't you forgive them? Why won't you give them another chance? They say it like forgiveness is a switch, like family is automatic, permanent, eternal. Like DNA is a leash that binds you no matter how many times it strangles. They don't understand. This was never about one forgotten event. Not one defense, not one barbecue, not one conflict. It was decades, 30 years of being an afterthought. 30 years of being the reliable one, the quiet one, the achiever who needed no praise. 30 years of Vivian's spotlight and Brendan's golden boy treatment, and my parents' selective blindness. My dissertation defense wasn't the betrayal. It was the proof, the culmination of every ignored milestone, every forgotten achievement, every time I'd stood quietly while they celebrated each other. It was them saying without saying, your biggest moment isn't important enough. And that was the moment I finally believed them. So I left, and the world didn't collapse. In fact, it opened. Today, I sit in a glass-walled office overlooking the Willamette River, designing sustainable water systems that will serve communities long after all of us are gone. I go home to a partner who listens, who remembers, who shows up. I have friends who celebrate my smallest wins like they're Nobel Prizes. I have coworkers who respect my time, my knowledge, my boundaries. I have in-laws who ask about my research because they genuinely want to understand it. I have a life I built myself, a life my birth family would have dimmed, minimized, or dismissed entirely. So no, I don't go home for holidays. I don't answer their messages. I don't send photos. I don't give them updates. I don't owe them intimacy just because we share genes. Some people can't fathom cutting family out. They can't imagine closing a door so completely. But they never lived my life. They never stood in a hallway at Stanford in a perfect Navy suit, hand shaking on a phone, hearing their mother say, "We're at the barbecue. We thought your defense was next weekend." They never spent 8 years climbing a mountain alone, only to discover their family hadn't bothered to look up from the grill. They never sat in front of 5 empty seats, reserved seats, saved seats, during the biggest moment of their life. If your family repeatedly chose other people's cookouts over your greatest achievements, if they ignored every milestone you bled for, if they made you feel invisible until the day you finally walked away, tell me honestly, would you disappear forever? Or would you keep hoping they'd finally notice you exist? For me, the answer was simple. I stopped waiting to be seen. I chose myself.